Now is one of the best times of the year to listen for the sounds of Keji, birds singing, brooks babbling, children laughing, and more. This summer, Jonathan Riley will be leading an auditory experience in the park. He's an interpreter for Keji and one of our community contacts there. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, Preston.
What sounds are the star of the show right now at Keji?
Oh, it's such a great time to be listening in the woods here right now. One of my favorite things to do in the morning when you're just waking up in your tent is just to listen as the birds, like one by one, add their voice to that chorus. The stars right now are probably the warblers. Everyone's always excited to hear which warblers are passing through. But probably my favorite, I don't know, it's always a toss-up between the hermit thrush and the winter wren. The hermit thrush, though, is singing so often, like all the time, and its first note is sort of sustained whistle, and then the song spirals a little bit and then cascades down. It's just a beautiful, almost soul-crushing, beautiful song.
So that's the hermit thrush?
The hermit thrush. There are several thrushes, but the hermit thrush is regarded by many people to be one of the most beautiful singers out there, for sure.
Nice. We have some sound of a hermit thrush. Let's give it a listen. Yeah, it's just the way you described it. It's kind of got a long whistle with some vibrato or something at the end. What do you think of that?
And I think it would even sound different for people when you hear it here in Kejimkujik out in amongst the big old growth hemlocks. That the end notes there, they sort of echo. That's the part that really gets you. Like that whistle gets your attention, and then there's echoey, fluty notes off the end.
What other birds, Jonathan, can people hear, whether it's daytime or nighttime at Keji right now?
The other one I really like is the winter wren. Now, it's a love it or hate it kind of song because the winter wren goes on for maybe 30 seconds, and a lot of people are like, okay, I've had enough of the winter wren, but I love the way the song sort of bubbles and swings around. And for me, I remember the first time I heard it, like was aware of it, was at Big Dam here at Kejimkujik. It was the year I learned to fly fish. So those two songs, like the song of singing and then the rhythm of fly fishing, is just sort of weave together in my brain.
Yeah.
The other bird that people are really familiar with, if you spend any time in Jeremy's Bay Campground, you're going to hear the barred owl. And it's got such a simple little song, often described as who cooks for you? Sort of 7 notes.
We got some sound of that as well. Let's hear that. What an interesting sound. It almost a little bit like if a bird could bark, you would think that's what it would sound like. So that's the barred owl. And not long ago, you also heard a great horned owl.
Yeah, you hear them less frequently. Where the barred owl usually has 7 notes, the great horned has less, like maybe 5. And it might be saying, in a deeper voice, it would be saying, who's awake? Me too. And the other owl you might hear, and I was lucky enough to hear that this spring too, is the saw-whet owl, which is a very tiny little owl. And its song is just like an incessant toot, 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 toot. It just goes on and on like that. But you have to be careful. The Mi'kmaq have stories that warn us not to make fun of the saw-whet owl. If you do, the saw-whet will come and burn your tent and all your clothes.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, we actually have a lot of Mi'kmaq stories that we tell about the birds here at Kejimkujik. Like, there's a great story about how the loon got its laugh. I don't have time to tell you today, but if you come on my program this summer, I can tell you how the loon got its laugh.
Okay, well, I can understand you don't want to give all your stories away, but yeah, for sure, you would definitely hear loons down in Keji, sort of on the lakes and whatnot. That's what you want to hear. Now, those are the birds that people may hear. What about other animals?
Well, if you're lucky, you'll hear coyotes. One thing that surprises people is deer. If you happen to surprise a deer, it will huff, like it's snorting or huffing, which is kind of a fun noise to hear in the woods. The other animals might be like a cicada, which is a kind of insect. Cicadas are sometimes called heat bugs because they really only sing, it's later in July, but when temperatures get above 25 degrees Celsius, they start with this long sort of noise that just goes on, and it kind of blends into the background. You may not even notice it after a while.
The cicadas are definitely a sound of summer. What else are you hearing down there?
Well, similar to the cicada, I guess a little bit different is the American toad. The American toads are going to stop singing soon, but they have also a very long musical note. And if you hear just one, it may not sound musical, but it's when they start singing together, because each toad has a slightly different frequency, so it almost sounds like they're singing in an a cappella group.
All right, we got some toad sounds. Is that like similar to a spring peeper sound, Jonathan?
Yeah, the spring peeper is obviously a little higher pitched and a shorter burst.
Yeah.
Another song people are going to, like a frog song you'll hear now, is the green frog makes a really funny little gunk noise. It sounds like someone's plucking a banjo that's out of tune, like gunk, gunk, gunk. You'll hear the green frog is another one.
Yeah. What about sounds not made by animals?
Yeah, that's interesting. We do kind of divide sounds into biophonies, which is sounds made by animals, and then there's geophonies, sounds made by like the wind, and that can be more varied than you think. When it blows through a pine tree, that's one sort of soft sound, but if the wind hits a stand of popples or trembling aspens, and that's a really loud, shaky sound. You can sometimes tell if there's a weather front coming through when it hits those popples and starts that shaking noise. But of course, there's also like waves lapping on the shore. But even those sounds change throughout the season. When the water's warm in July and August, it's a lighter lapping, and it's heavier right now. It's getting slowly lighter as the temperature warms up. But in the fall, when the water gets cold again, you can really tell what season you're in just by listening either to the wind or the animals or even these geophony sounds.
Yeah, that's so fascinating that you can associate the times and the weather and the temperature with the sounds around you. Do any of those sounds ever settle down?
That's for sure. Every year someone says to me in August, a visitor will say, how come there's no birds? And that's because August is kind of like their vacation time. In the spring, they're busy. All that singing is about finding a mate and sometimes staking out a territory. And then they put a lot of effort into all that singing, and then they raise their young. But come August, if they still have families, some of them go quiet because they don't want predators to know where the nests are, where the young are. But also they're just tired, and and some of them leave. Also, August is sort of a quiet period. But come the fall, by mid-September, October, we have the fall migration, birds coming back through the other way, and things start to pick up. But August is definitely a quiet month in the woods.
If you really want to get a really good auditory experience down there, where are the best spots in the park to go?
I love hardwoods and hemlocks for hearing birds or other animals generally, and Peters Point is also really good too.
Okay, and you're doing a program down there this summer about the sounds of Keji. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's not on the webpage yet, but I should have it up later this week. And I guess the idea is we'll walk along Peters Point, and it's going to be sort of a beginner bird walk. There's so many birds that are very incessant. We haven't really talked about that. There's a bunch of birds that are very forward and singing all the time. And if you can learn those, then you can start to listen more for the hermit thrush, which is in the background, or some of those other beautiful birds. So I'm also going to tell some of those Mi'kmaq stories I mentioned earlier about birds. There's so many Mi'kmaq stories about birds.
That's such a great idea. Good luck with that, Jonathan. Thanks for talking to us this morning.
You're welcome, Preston. Thanks a lot.
Jonathan Riley is an interpreter for Kejimkujik National Park.